Hey, before we start this video, I want to say that this is only the first part of the review. I have not forgotten about Starlight Isles, however, I have wanted to release this review for some time already. And since the thought did not come to me at all after leaving the ruins, I decided to split this review into two parts. The second part will appear on the channel later, but most likely not this month, since I have another video planned for the end of it. In general, do not pay attention to the end of this review, it is not the finale. Thank you for understanding. Oh, and also, my footage got corrupted, so I had to replay everything all over again. That's why I already know what to do and stuff, so don't mind my competence? Anyways, let's start the video. Hi everyone, that's Black here, and welcome back to my game corner. Hope you're doing great, because I certainly am. Not that long I made a podcast where I shared my opinion on Undertale. It's a great game by rights, I often replay it, and I obviously really like it, as do many of you. If you haven't listened to the podcast, go on, give it a listen. There is a lot of interesting stuff there. Today though, I want to touch on a different topic. Many of you know that Undertale has spawned many alternate universes. Fan boss battles, comics, fan games. There's so much content about alternate universes that it's impossible to list them all. However, since I'm discussing video games here, today I want to talk about a game that particularly touched me. Welcome to TS Underswap, the game created by Team Switched. The first demo of the game was released on December 25th, 2020, and since then the game continues to be updated and developed. At the moment, the game already has a full version of Ruins and Starlight Isles. These are the two parts of the game that I will analyze. You know, actually, I already advise you to play through the game yourself before watching my video, especially since the game is free and the link is in the description. And I will begin. The first thing that caught my eye when I launched the game was the ability to choose the decorated borders of the screen. A frame that visually reminds me of a mod for Undertale called Undertale Bits and Pieces. The visual style of the game as a whole looks brighter and more pleasant than the original Undertale style. It is worth noting a small and interesting detail right away. All of the clothes in the game will be displayed on the character sprite itself in the open world, and this is extremely cool. The game starts off as normal. The only thing you need to know is that the characters swap places with each other. Instead of Flowey, there will be Temmie. What's most interesting is that we'll find out later that Flowey himself exists here as a part of a separate type of absorbing character. We'll talk about him later though, when he appears, but for now, Tem. I really like that Tem themselves can communicate normally, but they pretend to communicate crookedly for the sake of the overall atmosphere. Of course, they have their own creepy form, and their task here is close to Flowey from the original, though here they simply want to steal our soul. The only thing here is that Asgore simply scares them off. Here, I think it's worth noting another interesting feature of the game. I don't know if it's just me, but I have a feeling that the musical themes of the characters, at least the main ones, are a mashup of some aspects of the characters' themes. For example, listen to this one. It sounds like both the Tem shop and Flowey's music. The same thing happens with Asgore and other characters. I think this is a very interesting and a cool detail that complements the overall picture in a special way. So, the positives don't end there. Remember the first puzzle from Undertale? Toriel solves the puzzle for us, mumbles something about puzzles, and we drag ourselves along. Boring? Boring. Tasteless even, I would say. No offense to Undertale fans, by the way. We're not even allowed to try to solve the puzzle ourselves. Only in the next room, and even then, with obvious hints, are we allowed to do something. It's different here. Asgore gives you one try to solve the first puzzle, and only if you fail, he'll solve it for you. That's just cool. That's a really great take. By the way, I'll talk about this in more detail a little later, but the puzzles here are reworked. For now, the last part of the main training is battles. Here Team Switched made a smart move. Remember the training dummy from the original? Yeah, he's here, but why leave him normal if you can just change him into the med dummy? Yeah, we'll meet this friend later again. In fact, I really like this idea. They could have completely ignored him and just left him where he was, or changed all the ghosts from the family in a circle, although purely theoretically the dummy here replaces Namstabluk. At least I think so, considering that he appears in the ruins. Although, to tell the truth, they are much larger here, but I divided them into two different sub-locations, ruins and old city. Anyway, the basics of the tutorial are over, but the good things in the game don't end there. As a bonus to everything, we were giving a journal. Something that was clearly missing in Undertale, to be honest. This journal will contain notes about everything we encounter, characters, enemies, bosses, their status, Kara's thoughts on these creatures, and all that stuff. This is the most interesting and useful thing in the whole game, in my opinion. I really want to fill it all up, especially since I've loved filling all sorts of journals since Hollow Knight. A kind of collecting, you know? Let's make a small conclusion about the training, especially since Asgore just gave us a candy, briefly explaining the principle of action of healing items, and now he's going to walk us along a long corridor. By the way, he stayed with us and is not running away ahead like Toriel did in the original. I like that in the training they give us full information about the features of the game. I like that they allow us to solve puzzles on our own and also give choice in the goddamn battle. Like, Asgore mentions that in addition to mercy you can fight, and if you do this, Asgore will react to this. There are even two options for the development of events when you first encounter the first enemy. You can hit Asgore or you can hit Frogget. I still don't understand whether it depends on random chance or not, but in short, this can happen, and in the first option, Asgore will justify Kara. I really like this interaction and the full explanation of the game mechanics, despite the fact that most likely the potential player has already played the Undertale and therefore knows what to do. In any case, such a complete tutorial plus journal is a recipe for a great start to the game. Well, in meantime, we have freedom of movement. And by the way, I know you're tired of me talking about how cool Asgore is here, but I have to point out one more detail. In fact, despite worrying about Kara, Asgore does not limit our movement. Like, you can go ahead, but be careful. Here you go, the phone, if something bad happens, just call. Congratulations, you can go further. So, next. Now is the time to talk about local puzzles, especially since there are a whole bunch of these puzzles waiting for us further. By the way, we can choose different paths with different puzzles. Wow. Just whoa, how much they thought it out. The local puzzles are thought out quite interestingly. I think that the main problem with puzzles in Undertale was that they were simple and straightforward. Like, go there, pull the lever, and that's it. Well, maybe sometimes you'll also have to remember the paths, but it seems to me that it is all too simple. Here, the puzzles are made more creatively. They are a little more difficult in places, but that's the beauty of it. It seemed to me that they make the player think a little more. They make you read the signs thoughtfully, and some of them actually made me stop and sit thinking about the solution. I really like it. No, of course, maybe I'm stupid, for me even Portal without hints is a problem to play, but hey, this is clearly cooler than going from point A to point B and pulling a lever. In general, I like the way the puzzles are made here. Among other things, this game has additional bosses and characters. There are really a lot of additional boss fights here, and this is just ultra cool. The first new boss we fight here is the Ruined Knights. And oh my god, how cute are they! The Whimsons are generally charming guys, but these are even cooler! Each of them has their own character and accordingly their own approach to mercy. You know, I leave it to you to play and enjoy the game yourself, so I won't tell you how to spare them. I just want to point out that I like that when interacting with a certain knight, it will be him who attacks. Cool concept. After the knights, there is still a second half of the puzzles. These, it seems to me, are a little easier than the previous ones, but they are also made with more creativity than the original. By the way, while I'm going through these puzzles, I want to note that I am comparing the game with Undertale, not to say that Toby Fox made a game worse or something like that. I am doing this so that you can see the difference and understand where my surprise and joy came from. The original Undertale is also a great game, you know my opinion about it if you listen to the podcast. In general, I should have said this right away, but I somehow forgot. Anyway, I hope you understand me, so let's continue the review. In the meantime, it's time to go to the City of Old. However, who would you have thought? It wouldn't be easy to do this, of course. Remember that dummy we saw in the training room? Yes, that's him, and he sent us to a new location in front of the sewers. It seems like someone did not think the capture of a human, huh? Well, on the other hand, I think this guy will return, and for now, new characters and puzzles await us. Interestingly, there is even a sign from Asgore here. I have no idea why he put it here, but maybe for other monsters? Well, he could have known that we would definitely get here, right? In any case, next we see a mechanic that, as I understand it, is taken from Deltarune. In fact, I didn't know that there was such a thing. I was told, but maybe I misunderstood something, so if anything, correct me in the comments. In any case, while I was rambling, the way is opened, which means... Aha! Remember the sun, here's a ray. Well, naturally, the dummy attacks us again. And I actually really like that the battle with him here is not a classic battle, but a real chase. It's like the segments with Undyne from the original. It looks entertaining and already at early stages makes the game dynamic in some way. And I also like the remix of his music theme that plays during the chase. So, we solved the puzzles, escaped from the dummy, what's next? Welcome to the City of Old. Wow, you should have seen me when I first got here. It's a huge place with a lot of residents, houses and shops. In fact, yeah, that's right, the local ruins are a big city where different monsters also live. Here I bought some supplies, just relaxed, chatted with the monsters and even saved the poor guy from the guys who wanted to harm him. In short, I had a really great time. I want to note that the presence of the city with quests, shops and all that stuff gives the ruins some kind of special homey vibe. You immediately feel it as a territory also populated by different monsters, who simply like it here more than in any other places. And oh, how many of them are here. Another huge plus that we could only dream of in Undertale, we're given the ability to run. Fast movement across large locations is a must, I think, especially when there is so much to do. As usual, I will not spoil everything, play it yourself and enjoy it. Also, I forgot to say earlier, but the game has a shortcut system, and from there to the end of the puzzles. This is a very convenient detail, which I think encourages more exploration, because you don't have to go back half an hour to find something little. After eliminating various problems here and there around the city, we come to Metalot's concert. This is a local metaton. By the way, let me remind you that initially he was a ghost in the original, so I don't see any problems. Here we have to participate in Metalot's show. In fact, this is just a regular boss fight. By the way, I will note that when choosing items for a snack, you can see how much HP each item restores. This is also very convenient. By the way, Metalot has a special attack for healing. That is, in fact, a simple attack that is activated when the player uses an item to restore HP. I have seen such attacks mainly in various fan boss battles, but now it is here too. By the way, such attacks do not move the battle forward naturally. Metalot's show gave me a few problems. It was quite difficult for me to figure out how to spare him, but that's the beauty of a pacifist. At the end, Metalot thanks us for helping with the show and promises to hang out with us if we stop by his house in Crystal Springs. Whoa, that sounds nice. This will be the local waterfall, right? Well, I can't wait to get there. For now, we can run on. And, aww, look at that animation. It's the cutest thing I've ever seen, just look at it. After that, I don't want to leave at all. But without it, you can't complete the game, so we still have to leave Asgore. And oh my god, how is it so disgusting. I feel like I killed someone. And initially, there was a completely different text, so just why? I understand perfectly that this is necessary, that there is no way, but somehow, well, I don't want to live in general, okay? I really like that Asgore is willing to talk about it just later. Like, if I were there, I would stay, sit, leave there before asking about the exit again. In general, I like that Asgore doesn't rush to destroy and block all the exit, but behaves rationally. Actually, next we have a battle with Asgore. And thanks the devil he doesn't destroy the mercy button, otherwise I was already scared when he took out his trident. There is nothing interesting here. The old song about how many have already left and died, I don't want you to die too, prove that you are a tough cookie, and we can move on. In short, standard. So, let's sum it all up. The game has great graphics, drawing, and overall design. I like that the barriers on the sides can be turned on and off, if desired. Overall, they look very organic and beautiful. The game itself is bright with a pleasant color scheme. I especially like that the ruins are made in such a blue color. I love blue. It's very pleasant to the eye. The soundtracks in the game are all special, made according to an interesting principle. It seems to me that many of them are inspired by some, how could I say it, a mashup of characters that replace each other. Earlier I made an example in the form of Tammy's soundtrack, which is similar to both Tam Shop and Flowey's melody. The same situation is observed with some other characters, especially the main bosses like Asgore or Med Dummy. The main sound of locations and regular battles also sound very nice, but unfortunately I did not find the sound on Spotify to add it to my playlist. The tutorial is very clear, plus it gives you the opportunity to independently understand how the puzzles work and what awaits you ahead. I especially like that Asgore does not exclude the possibility of attacking the enemy and talks about it. In general, during the battle, he gives a full description of all the possibilities, which is extremely useful for those who are not yet very familiar with Undertale. It is believed, of course, that you have completed the original game before this fan game, but there will probably be those who will play it before Undertale. In general, a complete tutorial with examples in games, especially complementally introduced into the game and plot, is not such a common occurrence, but I really like it. I have already mentioned the puzzles before, but I will mention them again. Here they are more interesting, more intricate, and make you think, although there are similar riddles that are solved by moving the stone to the bottom. I also think it is important to mention the character swap itself. It seems to me that this is more interesting here than in the canonical version. This will be especially evident later when we get to Starlight Isles. However, even now, the development of the game's characters is already noticeable. For example, Asgore, as a responsible former king, managed to keep the city in a normal state. Moreover, monsters live here quite nicely. Metalot is a great showman who, by the way, is content with a small stage. Perhaps these monsters don't even know about the existence of a bigger TV star, but even if they do, they seem to be content with a more good natural and grateful meta lot. There is coziness and warmth in everything here, even in the added characters like the Ruined Knights. The Brave team is generally my favorite boss in the game at the moment. They're hyper cute and I really like that sparing them means uniting them even more. It is very sweet. Now about the things I did not really like or just didn't quite understand why it was necessary. When leaving, the phrases sound ultra rude. This is probably a reference to the fact that Frisk lives in our soul no matter what, but to be honest, it seems like a bit too much. Especially considering that the phrase was originally specified differently. It seems a little out of place, and overall it sounds a little strange. Maybe it should have led me to some thoughts, but there were no other hints, so these words were like a blow. I understand that something should lead to Asgore not allowing me to leave, but still. Flowey. Why? Well, the question is more about where he's from, why he's here at all, and shouldn't he replace Tammy logically? No, I understand that in the original Flowey could reset timelines. Maybe this is a hint that he created this universe himself and is now watching how the events unfold, but who knows? And will there be a Tam shop, by the way? In general, either I didn't understand something, or it was a very strange move. So, this is where we'll end for today. Thank you all a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you didn't do it already. Have a nice one. Bye!